Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation, Leaning into Failure, Lessons Learned While Trying and Failing to Conduct Undergraduate Research During a Pandemic. I am Anna Mallory, and I started at Central Oregon Community College, and I am now at Oregon State University Cascades. Dr. Andrea Waddell is at Central Oregon Community College. Ray Barham is now at Portland State University. Alma Lugtu is at Central Oregon Community College, and Mia McGraw is also at Central Oregon Community College. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Andrea Waddell.
Hi, my name is Andrea Waddell, and I'm a professor of psychology at Central Oregon Community College, and I'm going to talk a little about our Undergraduate Research Lab and what happened to us during the pandemic. So there's been a trend at universities to start engaging students more in undergraduate research. And although some students may seek out labs early in their academic experience, many may not join until they're juniors or seniors. Now, community college students are sometimes at a disadvantage compared to students who are native to the four-year schools because they haven't had an opportunity to network with their faculty. And they're essentially unknowns who need not only learn how to navigate their school's culture, but they also have to determine how they will integrate into meaningful co-curricular experiences that are going to be beneficial to them if they decide to pursue graduate school. Now, although there are some traditional age college students at community colleges, there's a large portion of students who are non-traditional, who are first generation, who are from minority populations, who've struggled in high school academically, or who've just had a lot of financial barriers to their education. These students may not have had personal models or mentors that have helped them navigate college systems. And when I first came to COCC 18 years ago, our students who should have easily succeeded academically when they left to their four-year colleges were dropping out within a year. And we started interviewing alumni, and we found out that it was clear that they were overwhelmed by large classes, they didn't understand the expectations of students, and they were intimidated to speak with faculty. Because this was interfering with their success, we decided we were going to develop these co-curricular experiences that would help them with their transfers. Now, many of our activities have been built around helping students get involved into research. And that's because it not only helps our students become competitive when they move to their new schools, but it keeps their pathways clear for grad school. Also, for students who are not psych majors, it's beneficial to critical thinking, and it's also really important for scientific literacy. However, if you're trying to conduct research at a community college, you definitely have challenges you have to face. First of all, you don't have the support in the sense that you may not have financial support to establish labs, and you don't have equipment. There's not a lot of support to have you move out of the classroom because we don't have people who can backfill your classes. So we don't have part-timers, and we may not have graduate students or anybody who can come back and teach for us if I move out of the classroom to focus my energy on research. Plus, it's not about me conducting research. My primary focus is on advising and teaching. So that it's not, I don't need to be, I'm not generating my own research for publications. I need to be figuring out how to get my students to understand about research culture more. And then there's a fast turnover of students that it disrupts your cohorts as you're going through. So prior to the Undergraduate Research Lab, we had students who wanted to get involved in research. The way they would do it is they would approach their faculty mentors and ask to do independent studies. However, after advising several students on independent studies, I realized that they were coming up with projects that were way too complicated and they just weren't feasible. And that makes sense because at that part of their career, they haven't been exposed to a lot of research methods. Even the ones who've taken the research methods class were still not really understanding how to design a really solid study. They didn't understand IRBs, and they didn't understand some of the ethics that went into it. So rather than encouraging students to develop their own research, as I mentioned, I decided to look at the challenges and said, okay, this is going to be about training students on the culture of research. And how can I do this? So what was great is around this time, I discovered the Open Science Foundation and the CRAPE project. And the focus is a lot on the replication research. And this is a perfect framework for research at a community college level because it takes away the burden of trying to come up with innovative research design. And it allows us to critically examine the background literature, why the researchers potentially made choices for their designs and their statistics, whether studies could be feasibly conducted today. Also, participation in CRAPE exposes students to open science conversations, discussions of ethics, and transparency of data. Now, Another thing I recognized is that many of my students were struggling with confidence. There was this paralyzing fear of failure. There was hypersensitivity to critiques and this need for perfection. And some of my students just had this mindset that they were just community college students, and they didn't understand that they were freshmen and sophomores that were equal to their four-year counterparts. So I wanted to shift their mindset out of this environment by creating a supportive situation that would allow students to embrace failure and see it as an opportunity. So when I developed this class, which would give me some credit and load release as well to teach this class, is I set up as a pass-fail. And we have general outcomes, but the class is formatted in a way where the conversations and the opportunities guide whatever the topics are for the next week. And the big thing we always focus on is we never fail. We always look at what happened and we discuss what the next steps are. And hopefully our work will lead to opportunities for students to present and venues, so that way they can get more comfortable with presenting their work. And we did this. The first time we did this, we were wildly successful. We got through the IRB, we collected the data, and we were able to take our poster to the our first WPA conference as a team. So coming off the excitement from that first success, we had 2019, we had a bunch of new students that came in and we selected a new study. And it was this great study called Going Green to Be Seen. And it had an interesting premise that people were selecting green projects because it signaled status. And we started out with our IRB development. And initially we thought it was going to take us 1 quarter, but because ethics had changed, we found that our recruitment practices were now considered potentially coercive, that you couldn't go into classes and solicit students, and we couldn't even ask faculty to solicit students. So we really got stumped by our recruitment practice because we didn't have an open recruitment pool, and we spent 2 quarters trying to figure out how do we recruit participants that avoid potential coercion. We finally got that solved after 2 quarters, and we ran our first pilot study at the COCC Campus Showcase, which is a cross-discipline research event that anybody from across the campus can come in and present their projects. Now, the showcase was a weird time period because this was when the borders started closing. So people were calling, it was our last on-campus event, and people were calling their family members across, overseas, saying, get out of the countries, you need to get back. You're not going to be able to get back into the country if you don't leave. So it was a weird time. It was unsettling. And then the very next week, all of our classes went online, and then we didn't go back into the classroom for almost a full year. So spring 2020, we spent most of our time on Zoom, and I had a small group of students that came in and that wanted to meet each week. We still continued to talk about research, but all data collection was pretty much done. I was having to try to figure out some new opportunities for them, but we just spent a lot of time checking in, kind of mental health check-ins, and we still talked about research, but we weren't able to be very productive on our project. Spring 2021, the campus partially reopens, and now we're allowed to meet in small groups, but we have an entire new group of RAs, and we have to retrain them, and we're still having participant challenges. And we tried to run it in the showcase, and then we did it in fall 2021. We were still struggling with recruitment, so we decided to maybe consider doing it online. And then we conducted another study at the showcase, and even after the 3 showcases, our final participant total was only 25 students. My students they were exhausted and they were tired and they were experiencing a lot of stress over this project. And so finally I just had to say, you know what, we're done. So what did we learn from this? First of all, what I learned is that during this time period, I was really struggling as well. I think many of us were struggling. I was miserable teaching remotely. I didn't like talking to all the little boxes. I was in tears because I was having to try to figure out how to do all my classes in this new format, and I was disconnected from my colleagues, and I was just disconnected from everybody. There was a lot of tension on our campus because the admin didn't know how to really support us that well. And even though I wanted to give up on the Undergraduate Research Lab, the fact that the students were like, let's try this, turns out to be a key component to me getting through the pandemic in a successful way. So I learned, number one, that connection was the key. It's the most vital key in terms of providing safe environments for students to thrive, for them to feel comfortable, for them to critique each other and to push each other in a different direction. The second thing is maintaining flexibility during this. So as much as I wanted us to go through this process and this training, and here's the steps that we're going to do, what I found was that I had to let go. And when I let go, what ended up happening is that it was more about the process than the outcomes. We may not have ever gotten the project done, but we came up with all these new collaborations and experiences, and we had these new opportunities that we had never even thought about prior, because Zoom allowed us to now connect with people across the state, even across the country. So we were bringing in speakers and that sort of thing. So in the end, even though we turned out to be kind of failure when it came to completing the replication project, we still got a lot out of this just because we stayed flexible and we were still focusing on what do we need to do to learn about research, which I'm going to turn this over to my students now, and they can tell you a little bit more about all the experiences that they gained from this as they were going through this process.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Mallory, and I started my educational journey at Central Oregon Community College, and I am now a senior at Oregon State University Cascades. I worked on the Going Green project for 3 years. Over those years, we experienced huge barriers in completion of the project. At first, it was very standard for research in that I took the ethics training required for research assistants to understand the ins and outs. I was able to help write and submit the replication study IRB, and then only after a couple of months, the pandemic hit. We managed to keep a core group connecting and communicating throughout the pandemic on Zoom, but we could not actually collect data during this time period. With these barriers, I decided that I would adapt the study into an online format to be able to collect data. Doing this only created more barriers for myself and our lab. We had no money as a small community college to be able to purchase IRB compliant software, and even then, we'd have to adapt the IRB, a process that could take months, to state that we were doing data collection online due to the pandemic. This was only further complicated by the fact that we were doing a replication, so any tweaks to the IRB that we had to make would not make it compliant with the open science framework foundations for a replication. I had to scrap this idea after starting to burn out on searching for software, funding, and participants, and overall, we only ended up gathering 25 participants, as Andrea stated, and we needed 100 for the replication. It was hard for me because I wanted something to show for. I wanted a successful replication study. I wanted to show that I could do the work and I knew how to ethically conduct research. Little did I know that at the time that this whole experience would be more than sufficient to show that I had done the research, learned the ethics, produced results, and explored a lot of options that traditionally would not need to be explored. I did what I could with the limited resources available, and I definitely learned more through this process than I would have in just doing the replication. So I think, honestly, lesson 1 for me would be confidence. I started 3 years ago just as a research assistant, and I moved up to lead research assistant and then project mentor to other students, and ultimately running the lab in the place of the principal investigator and teaching. So lesson 2 would be that I have learned the ins and outs and technicalities and ethics of science and how to write and submit a really strong IRB, navigating complicated factors and putting a study online. And lesson number 3, the research process applies to your life. So working with limited resources and still thriving, still making do. Interacting and bonding with a diverse group of people in our lab, and simply persevering onward. I'm going to go ahead and hand this off.
My name is Alma Lugtu, and I am a non-traditional student in the Undergraduate Research Lab. After earning my bachelor's and a law degree, plus a 20-year professional career in law and business, I am now pursuing a PhD in psychology. I joined the Undergraduate Research Lab in 2021, while the pandemic was in full swing and in-person interaction was strictly limited. I first learned about psychology experiments in a research methods class. In that class, I created an independently designed experiment testing whether participants' student loan repayment choices changed after seeing an amortization table. My experiment had statistically significant results, and my professor, Dr. Matthew Novak, suggested I submit an institutional review board proposal and pursue publication. I joined the Undergraduate Research Lab to learn more about psychology experiments. The lab members were already running replication studies, and we all learned how to design and run experiments and how to analyze data. Our PI, Professor Andrew Waddell, also emphasized the importance of open science and ethical experiment design and data analysis. Being a member of the Undergraduate Research Lab led me to 2 more research opportunities. From the lab's replication studies and the additional research I completed, I learned 3 important lessons. Lesson number 1, it's critical to design experiments that are effective and efficient. For example, while doing the replication study, we saw firsthand, from a research assistant point of view, how the experiment could have been more streamlined. There was a section where participants were asked to give a response, but there was no time limit on their response. We had some participants finish in a few minutes, while others took over 15 minutes. That caused frustration among both research assistants and participants. Now I know to test whether each aspect of my experiment is effective and efficient. Lesson number 2. Scientific experiments get done through teamwork. Through the research lab and other research opportunities, I realized that it's important for every member of the team to understand the experiment goals and any potential difficulties. When team members are simply told to do a task without understanding how it fits into the overall structure of the experiment, there can be confusion and decreased effectiveness. As a future PI, I will ensure that each team member understands the goal and that we communicate up and down the line about whatever difficulties we're having. Lesson number 3. Sharing research findings is the goal. It's so exciting to run experiments, to collect data, and to summarize your findings. And the goal is to share our findings with the scientific community. My first experience in sharing my experiment results was at the 2021 University of Oregon Undergraduate Research Symposium on an interactive poster panel. It was nerve-wracking, but so exciting. I would not have known about the symposium if not for my participation in the Undergraduate Research Lab. I look forward to designing more experiments and sharing those results, and I truly feel that the Undergraduate Research Lab was my launching pad. My next step is applying to PhD programs. As I pursue that goal, I'm also contributing to diversity efforts. I'm the first person in my entire family to consider pursuing a PhD. All of the students in our Undergraduate Research Lab are first-generation college students, live in a rural community, or are LGBTQ+. As I learn about the PhD application process, I share everything I know with the other lab members so we can all pursue research success.
Hello, my name is Mia. I've worked in the Undergraduate Research Lab for 1 year. When I first started, I pretty much went in with no research experience. When I thought of the word research, I imagined a lot of computers, math, lab coats, and test tubes. And quickly I learned that there's a lot more nuance to it than that. Throughout my time in the Undergraduate Research Lab, I never felt afraid to ask any questions. Even though there was a knowledge gap between me and some of my peers and my advisors, I never felt like I was asking stupid questions or like they would look down on me for asking something. I also met a lot of my role models there. I really struggled at first finding examples of other women in science, and I learned throughout my time in the Undergraduate Research Lab that there were a lot of women in science, one of them being Dr. Andrea Waddell, and some other really important people I met will also be listed in the acknowledgement section. For me, there were probably three big lessons that I learned throughout my time there. One was learning the behind the scenes of social science research. And pretty much what that means to me is when I'm online and I see an article that says eating chocolate will help you lose weight, before I reach for the M&Ms, I go to the bottom and I see, did they cite sources? If they did, I go in and I can take a quick look at the journal and see if there's, any substance to it and if it's something that was accurately represented in the article. Lesson number 2 would be supporting peers in writing their IRBs. And this really helped me when I was helping write research assistant directions. I didn't have any experience in technical writing, and I think that this really gave me a good foundation on writing clear and concise rules that anybody can look at and follow. Lesson 3 would be learning my own personal research interests. When I first went into the Undergraduate Research Lab, I really didn't have any idea what career I wanted to follow or what section of science I wanted to pursue. But I quickly realized that my personal research interests didn't include any humans in them. So as much as I loved working in the psychology lab, I ended up moving to other research areas. So, other research that I ended up doing was in hydrology. So you'll see I was featured in a local newspaper for doing research on groundwater in Central Oregon, which is really important right now because of the drought that we're facing. And then in the second picture, you'll see that I've been doing research at the Pine Mountain Observatory on exoplanet transits. And in both of these situations, I've used skills that I learned in the Undergraduate Research Lab. I mean, skills like data analysis and critical thinking and problem solving, especially teamwork. So really, even though I'm not working with people anymore, all of the skills that I learned are still very applicable.
So where are we now? I guess for me, I'm in a better place, especially when it comes to my teaching, because now I've learned how to embrace these remote technologies and make them more engaging. I've actually changed a lot of my classroom dynamics and the way I teach my classes based on how I've structured the Undergraduate Research Lab. And the reason I've done this is because I've just seen how these students have thrived, and they're humbling and they're incredible to work with. And I'm very proud of them. And I want to get that more into my general classrooms as well. I want that same kind of vibrant energy. The other thing that's happened is because of Zoom and because of the fact that we've been scrambling to try to figure out what to do because we couldn't do our research, is we have a lot of really interesting new collaborations and student opportunities. We're working with University of Oregon now. We're working with OSU Cascades. Some of the students have been reaching out to researchers in the nation to see if they would come back and Zoom with us and talk to us. So it's been really great to see them now actively going out and seeking opportunities. They're looking into sneak peeks and they're just getting really, really excited about the idea of transferring and where they're going to go next. There's also a lot of excitement about developing new skills. We're all going to take a programming class together next quarter when I go on sabbatical, and we're trying to learn how to potentially adapt things into an online environment. So we're still pushing and learning and trying to figure out how to make this work in a meaningful way. We've developed a training structure for UGRL to help with sustainability of the program where students can come in at different levels. We've got research assistant 1s that are doing the replication training with me. The research assistant 2s can start to come up with their own innovative ideas. And the research assistant 3s, if they've been there, actually start to teach back. So they go and learn things and they come back and they teach. Sometimes they teach the lessons that I teach. And I think this year they just pretty much took my lab from me, but that's great. So it's great to just let them do this and let them organically kind of grow and give them feedback on how they're doing. One of the things I am looking into is I'm investigating and developing an undergraduate research center at Central Oregon Community College, because we know that there's other pockets of this type of idea and this vibe happening around campus, and we want to find some way to unify all of us and then get our students plugged into the right types of labs that they can get involved in. So they might start out in psychology, but as with Mia, they might find themselves landing into more physical sciences because that's kind of where their interest lies. But either way, they're still going these routes that they're fascinated with. And then the other thing that's been great is we've reached out in the community and we established connections with a community group that actually helps my students plug into potential internships so they can get paid. So before we were more siloed and we were more focused inward and the fact that we were just doing what we had to do within the school. And now with the pandemic and Zoom and kind of taking away, like shifting the ground and making us uncomfortable with our framework, we've become a lot more expansive and productive in ways that I had never expected, which is really incredible to me. Finally, with acknowledgments and contact information, I'd like to acknowledge our newest UGRL members and their efforts in the past year. So Oscar Tovar is an up-and-coming student, Ray Chenault's an up-and-coming student, and they've just started getting involved in this. We'd also like to acknowledge the support of the COCC faculty and the social science department, and particularly our psychology faculty, Dr. Matthew Novak, Rebecca Walker-Sands, and Lisa Phoenix, because without their support, we wouldn't be able to accomplish a lot of stuff we've been able to accomplish. If anybody has any questions about how we're doing undergraduate research at Central Oregon Community College, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to brainstorm with people. If you want to talk to a student about their student experiences, please contact Anna Mallory. And thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.